The blood soaked through the threadbare towel faster than Zara Olsen could replace it. But her hands remained steady as she pressed down on the young mother's abdomen, coaxing the stubborn placenta free while whispering words of encouragement that she barely believed herself anymore. The February wind of 1878 howled through the cracks in the cabin walls, and Zara's own exhaustion threatened to pull her under like quicksand. But she pushed through, because that was what she did, what she had always done for the past 8 years in Bonanza, Colorado, delivering every single baby born in this rough mountain town, while no one ever seemed to notice that she was slowly dying inside. "There now, Martha, you did beautifully," Zara said softly as the afterbirth finally came free and the bleeding slowed to something manageable. The new mother, barely 19 years old, lay pale and exhausted on the straw mattress, her newborn son already nursing at her breast. "You rest now. I will clean everything up and check on you both before I leave." Martha's husband, a young miner named Thomas, hovered anxiously in the doorway, his face gray with worry. "Is she going to be all right, Miss Olsen? The baby too?" "They are both fine," Zara assured him, though her own body screamed for rest. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, having delivered twins to the saloon keeper's wife yesterday morning before being summoned here in the dead of night. "Make sure she drinks plenty of water and eats good, nourishing food. Beef broth, eggs, whatever you can manage, and keep her warm." Thomas nodded gratefully, pressing $2 silver into her hand. It was more than most could afford, and Zara accepted it with quiet thanks, knowing that half the families in town still owed her payment from deliveries months or even years ago. She did not have the heart to refuse anyone, could not stand the thought of a woman laboring alone without help, so she came whenever she was called, day or night, whether she was sick or exhausted or barely able to stand. The dawn was breaking cold and pink over the Rocky Mountains when Zara finally stumbled out of the cabin, her medical bag heavy in her hand, her body swaying with fatigue. The main street of Bonanza was still mostly asleep, though smoke rose from a few chimneys, and she could hear the distant sound of axes biting into wood from the lumber camp up the mountain. Her own small cabin sat at the edge of town, a lonely structure that she had purchased with her savings when she first arrived, young and full of hope that she could make a difference in this wild place. That hope had worn thin over the years, eroded by sleepless nights and unpaid debts, by the way people took her for granted, calling on her at all hours but rarely thinking to check if she herself was well, if she had food in her cupboards or wood for her fire. Zara had delivered 143 babies in Bonanza, had saved the lives of at least a dozen mothers who would have died without her skill. But she could count on one hand the number of times someone had brought her a hot meal or offered to chop wood for her stove. She was so lost in her exhausted thoughts that she nearly walked straight into the massive figure standing in front of her cabin door. Zara gasped and stumbled backward, her medical bag slipping from her fingers. The man who stood before her was unlike anyone she had ever seen in Bonanza, and she knew everyone in this town. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the rising sun. His chest and arms strained against his buckskin shirt, muscles clearly defined even through the heavy leather. Long dark hair fell past his shoulders, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. His eyes, a striking pale blue, watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Miss Olsen," he said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through her chest. He bent to pick up her fallen medical bag, handling it with surprising gentleness for such large hands. "I apologize for startling you." "Who are you?" Zara asked, trying to steady her racing heart. Her exhausted mind struggled to process this stranger's presence. "What are you doing at my home?" "Name is Wade Emerson," he said, holding out the bag to her. "I have been watching this town for the past few weeks from up in the high country. Came down to trade furs yesterday, and all I heard was people talking about how the midwife had been up all night with 2 different births, had not slept in days, but still came running when she was called. Seemed to me like everyone in this town depends on you, but no one is taking care of you in return." Zara stared at him, uncertain whether to be flattered or offended by this stranger's presumption. "I do not need anyone to take care of me. I manage just fine on my own." Wade's pale blue eyes traveled over her slowly, taking in her thin frame, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. "Do you? When did you last eat a proper meal? When did you last sleep more than a few hours? Your woodpile is nearly gone, and I would wager your cupboards are bare because you spend all your time caring for everyone else." The accuracy of his observation struck too close to home, and Zara felt sudden tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely, straightening her spine. "That is none of your concern, Mr. Emerson. Now if you will excuse me, I need to rest." She reached for her door, but Wade's large hand gently caught her wrist. His touch was warm, careful, not restraining but stopping her nonetheless. "I already chopped you a full cord of wood. It is stacked behind your cabin, and I took the liberty of leaving some supplies inside. Smoked venison, flour, coffee, beans. You do not owe me anything for it. Consider it payment for all the unpaid debts this town owes you." Zara's throat tightened, and she found herself unable to speak. When was the last time someone had shown her such simple kindness? When had anyone noticed that she was struggling, that she gave and gave until there was nothing left of herself? "Why?" she finally managed to whisper. "You do not even know me." Wade released her wrist, but his eyes remained locked on hers. "Because someone should care for the person who cares for everyone else, and it seems like no one in this town has thought to do it." With that, he touched the brim of his hat and walked away, his long strides carrying him down the street toward the trading post. Zara stood frozen, watching him go, something warm and unfamiliar blooming in her chest. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the feeling. He was just a mountain man passing through, probably would be gone within a day or two. There was no point in dwelling on his kindness. But when she pushed open her cabin door and saw the neatly arranged supplies on her table, the fresh wood stacked in the box by her stove, she found herself crying for the first time in months. She sank into her rocking chair and let the tears come. All the exhaustion and loneliness and desperate need to be seen pouring out in quiet sobs. After she had cried herself empty, Zara built up her fire, heated water for tea, and made herself a proper breakfast of fried venison and cornbread. The food tasted better than anything she had eaten in weeks, probably because she was not gulping it down between calls or forcing it past her exhaustion. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and then she crawled into her bed and slept for 8 uninterrupted hours, longer than she had slept in months. When she woke, the afternoon sun was slanting through her window, and she felt more rested than she had in ages. She dressed in a clean dress, braided her long blonde hair, and ventured out to check on Martha and the baby. The young mother was doing well, color returning to her cheeks, and Thomas seemed less frantic. Zara examined them both thoroughly, pleased with their progress, and then made her rounds to several other new mothers in town. Everywhere she went, people mentioned the mountain man who had come down from the high country. Old Mrs. Henderson at the general store said he had traded the finest beaver pelts she had seen in years. The blacksmith reported that Wade had purchased supplies for an extended stay in the mountains, including new traps and ammunition. The saloon keeper mentioned that Wade had nursed a single whiskey for hours, speaking little but listening to everything, his intelligent eyes missing nothing. "Strange fellow," the saloon keeper said. "Polite enough, but you get the feeling he could tear a man apart with his bare hands if he had a mind to. Asked a lot of questions about you, Miss Olsen. Wanted to know how long you had been here, whether you had family, why you worked yourself half to death." Zara felt her cheeks warm. That is hardly his concern. Maybe not, but he seemed mighty interested. Told Frank Miller that he ought to be ashamed of himself, letting you deliver his wife and baby without so much as offering to chop your wood. Frank got all puffed up and angry, but one look from that mountain man and he backed right down. "Reckon Frank will be settling his debt with you soon." True to the saloon keeper's words, Frank Miller appeared at Zara's door that evening with a month's worth of firewood and 3 chickens as payment for delivering his daughter 6 months ago. He mumbled something about meaning to pay her sooner, avoiding her eyes, and Zara accepted the payment with quiet grace, though she suspected Wade Emerson had put the fear of God into the man. Over the next few days, other families began settling their debts. The butcher brought her a side of beef. The farmer delivered fresh eggs and milk. Even the mayor's wife, who had owed Zara for 2 births, sent over a beautiful quilt and a basket of preserves. Zara's cupboards, which had been nearly bare for months, suddenly overflowed with food, and through it all, she caught glimpses of Wade Emerson. He seemed to be staying in town longer than expected, boarding at the small hotel above the saloon. She saw him chopping wood for the widow Johnson, whose husband had died in a mining accident last year. She spotted him repairing the roof on the schoolhouse, his powerful muscles rippling as he worked. He helped the blacksmith shoe a difficult horse, speaking softly to the animal until it calmed. But whenever Zara tried to approach him, to thank him properly for what he had done, he seemed to disappear like smoke. A week after their first meeting, Zara was called to a birth in the middle of a snowstorm. Rebecca Stone, a young woman expecting her first child, had gone into labor early, and her husband was frantic. Zara bundled up against the howling wind and trudged through knee-deep snow to the stone cabin on the far edge of town, her medical bag clutched tight against her chest. The labor was difficult, the baby malpositioned, and Zara worked for hours trying to turn the child without success. Rebecca's screams echoed through the small cabin, and her husband paced outside, unable to bear watching his wife's pain. Zara's arms ached from the effort, and she was beginning to fear that she might lose both mother and child when the cabin door burst open and Wade Emerson entered, snow covering his broad shoulders. "I heard the screams from down the mountain," he said simply. "What do you need?" Zara did not waste time questioning his presence. "I need you to hold her shoulders steady while I try one more time to turn the baby, and I need you to keep her calm. Talk to her, distract her, anything to help her relax." Wade moved to the head of the bed without hesitation, his large hands gently but firmly holding Rebecca's shoulders. His deep voice began speaking to her, low and soothing, telling her about the mountains in spring, about the wildflowers that covered the meadows, about the elk calves taking their first wobbly steps. His words painted such vivid pictures that even Zara found herself momentarily transported, and she felt Rebecca's body begin to relax under the spell of his voice. Taking advantage of the moment, Zara reached inside and carefully turned the baby. She felt the small body shift, rotate, and then slide into the proper position. Relief flooded through her. "There," she breathed. "The baby has turned. Now we wait for the next contraction and you push with everything you have, Rebecca." With Wade's steady presence and Zara's skilled hands, the baby was born an hour later, a healthy boy with a strong cry. Rebecca wept with joy and exhaustion, and her husband rushed in to embrace his new family. Zara cleaned the baby and examined Rebecca, making sure everything was as it should be, while Wade quietly cleaned up the worst of the mess and built up the fire. By the time they left the cabin, the storm had passed, and the moon shone bright on the fresh snow. Zara's whole body trembled with exhaustion, but there was also a deep satisfaction in her chest. Another life brought safely into the world, another mother who would live to raise her child. "You should not be walking alone in this snow," Wade said quietly. "Let me see you home." Zara was too tired to argue. They walked in silence through the sleeping town, their breath pluming white in the frigid air. When they reached her cabin, Wade built up her fire and set water to boil for tea while Zara sank into her rocking chair. "You have a gift," Wade said as he handed her a cup of steaming tea. "The way you handled that birth, the way you stayed calm when anyone else would have panicked, that child would have died without you, the mother too, most likely." "I only did what needed to be done," Zara said softly. "Anyone with proper training could have done the same. But no one else did they? You are the only midwife for 100 miles. You carry the weight of every birth in this region on your shoulders, and you do it without complaint, without rest, without anyone acknowledging what you sacrifice." His words cracked something open inside her, and Zara found herself speaking truths she had never voiced aloud. "Sometimes I am so tired I can barely stand. Sometimes I resent the knocking on my door in the middle of the night, even though I know a woman needs me. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been if I had stayed in Boston, if I had married that banker my father wanted me to marry, if I had chosen comfort over purpose." "Why did you not?" Wade asked, settling his large frame into the chair across from her. "Because I wanted to matter," Zara said simply. "I wanted my life to mean something. In Boston, I was just another woman expected to marry well, have children, and manage a household. But I had apprenticed with a midwife, learned the craft, and I knew I had a talent for it. When I heard that towns in the West were desperate for medical help, I saw my chance to make a real difference. So I came here, bought this cabin, and started attending births." "And you have made a difference," Wade said firmly. "You have saved lives, Zara. That matters more than anything." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with cold. She looked at him properly then, really looked at him. Beneath the wild hair and thick beard, she could see a strong jaw, high cheekbones, a face that was ruggedly handsome. His pale blue eyes held an intelligence and kindness that surprised her. His hands, so large and powerful, held his tin cup with careful gentleness. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. "Why have you stayed in town? Why have you helped me? Why do you look at me like that?" Wade was silent for a long moment, his eyes locked on hers. "Because from the moment I saw you stumbling home exhausted, giving everything you had to others while slowly breaking yourself apart, I knew I had found something I did not even know I was looking for. I have lived alone in these mountains for 5 years, Zara. I left civilization after the war after seeing too much death and cruelty. I wanted peace, solitude, a life away from people, and I found it up there in the high country. But I also found loneliness, found that a man is not meant to live entirely alone. When I came down to trade and heard everyone talking about you, about how you delivered all their babies but never had anyone to care for you, something in me recognized something in you. 2 people who give everything and ask for nothing. 2 people who are slowly disappearing because no one sees them." His words struck her like a physical blow, so accurate they stole her breath. "I see you," she whispered. "And I see you," Wade replied, his voice rough with emotion. I see how strong you are, how brave, how dedicated. I see how beautiful you are, even exhausted and covered in someone else's blood. I see everything you are, Zara Olsen, and I want to be the person who cares for you the way you care for everyone else. Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks, and she did not bother to wipe them away. I do not know how to let someone care for me. I have been alone so long. Wade rose from his chair and knelt before her, his large hands gently cradling her face. Then let me teach you. Let me stay. Let me help you. Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished. You barely know me, Zara protested weakly, even as she leaned into his touch. I know enough, Wade said firmly. I know you are the woman I have been waiting for without knowing it. I know that my life up in those mountains suddenly feels empty when I think about going back without you. I know that I want to wake up every morning and make sure you have everything you need. I know that I want to be the one you lean on when you are tired, the one who holds you when you cry, the one who reminds you that you matter. Wade, she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and warm and tasting of tea and something wild. Zara melted into the kiss, her hands coming up to tangle in his long hair. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with tenderness, so long since she had allowed herself to be vulnerable, and the feeling was overwhelming. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. Let me court you properly. Let me prove to you that I am serious about this, about us. I will stay in town, help you with whatever you need, and show you every day that you are worth caring for. What about your life in the mountains? Zara asked. You said you came here for solitude. I came here to escape pain, Wade corrected. But I think I have been alone long enough. I think it is time to live again, really live, not just exist. And I want to do that with you. Zara searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt or deception, but found only sincerity and a fierce protectiveness that made her feel safe for the first time in years. All right, she whispered. Court me, Wade Emerson. Show me what it means to be cared for. The smile that broke across his bearded face was like sunrise, transforming his rugged features into something beautiful. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the taste of her, and Zara let herself sink into the feeling of being cherished. Over the following weeks, Wade proved true to his word. He moved out of the hotel and built himself a small cabin near Zara's, close enough to help her but respectable enough to avoid gossip. Every morning, he brought her fresh water from the well and made sure her fire was blazing before she woke. He accompanied her on calls when the weather was bad or the distance was far, carrying her medical bag and providing an extra pair of strong hands when needed. He hunted and fished, keeping her supplied with fresh meat. He repaired the roof of her cabin, fixed the loose boards on her porch and built her a proper woodshed. But more than the physical help, Wade gave Zara something she had been starving for: companionship. They talked for hours in the evenings, sharing stories of their pasts. Wade told her about growing up in Missouri, about fighting for the Union in the war, about the horrors he had witnessed at Shiloh and Gettysburg. He spoke of losing his entire family to cholera in the year after the war, of the crushing loneliness that had driven him into the mountains. Zara told him about her strict upbringing in Boston, about her mother who had died when she was young, about her father who had seen her only as a commodity to be married off. She spoke of her apprenticeship with the midwife who had delivered her as a baby, of the joy she found in bringing new life into the world. She admitted her fears that she was not enough, that she would make a mistake and lose a mother or baby, that she would end up old and alone because she had given everything to her work. You will never be alone again, Wade promised her one evening as they sat by her fire, his arm around her shoulders. Even if something happened and you could not be with me, you would never be alone. You have touched too many lives, delivered too many babies. This whole town is your family, even if they forgot to show it before I reminded them. Zara nestled closer to his solid warmth, breathing in the scent of pine and wood smoke that clung to him. I do not want to be without you, though. You have become essential to me so quickly, and it frightens me a little. Why does it frighten you? Wade asked, his deep voice rumbling through his chest. Because I have always been the one who gives, who cares, who serves. I do not know how to receive, how to let myself need someone. What if I disappoint you? What if I cannot be what you need? Wade turned her face up to his pale blue eyes fierce with emotion. You already are what I need. You are strong and brave and dedicated. You have a good heart, Zara, the kind of heart that gives without expecting anything in return. That is rare and precious. All I want is the chance to give back to you, to show you that you deserve to be cherished as much as anyone you have helped. He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Zara felt herself falling completely in love with this mountain man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she had not known how to voice. His hands, so large and powerful, touched her with exquisite gentleness, mapping the curve of her face, the line of her neck, the shape of her shoulders. She could feel the leashed strength in his body, the muscles that rippled beneath his shirt, and she marveled that such power could be tempered with such tenderness. I am falling in love with you, she whispered against his lips. I think I have been since the moment I found you standing outside my door. I am already in love with you, Wade replied, his voice rough with emotion. I loved you when I first saw you stumbling home exhausted but still standing. I loved you more when you did not hesitate to let me help during that difficult birth. I love you now, and I will love you for the rest of my life if you will let me. Yes, Zara breathed. Yes, I will let you. They kissed again, and this time when Wade lifted her in his powerful arms and carried her to the bedroom, Zara did not protest. She had spent so long being alone, so long denying her own needs, that she was ready to let herself be loved. Their lovemaking was tender and passionate, Wade worshiping her body with his hands and mouth, showing her pleasures she had only read about in banned books. He was patient and gentle, mindful of his great strength, making sure she felt safe and cherished every moment. When they finally joined together, moving as one, Zara felt something break open inside her, some locked door she had kept closed for years. She cried out his name as waves of pleasure crashed through her, and Wade held her close, whispering words of love and devotion into her hair. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her narrow bed, Zara's head resting on Wade's broad chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, and she had never felt more content, more complete. "Marry me," Wade said suddenly, his voice vibrating through her. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a few weeks, but I have never been more certain of anything. Marry me, Zara. Let me be your husband, your partner, your protector. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you are loved and cared for." Zara lifted her head to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that she might refuse. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Wade Emerson." The joy that flooded his face made her heart swell, and when he kissed her again, she tasted the salt of his tears mixed with her own. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Bonanza. The entire town turned out to celebrate, bringing food and gifts, and Zara realized with some surprise that Wade had been right. These people were her family, and they did care about her, even if they had not always shown it well. The women she had helped deliver hugged her and wished her happiness. The men clapped Wade on the shoulder and told him he was getting a treasure of a wife. Martha, the young mother whose difficult birth had been one of Zara's last deliveries before meeting Wade, brought her baby boy to the wedding. "We named him Wade," she told them shyly. "After the man who helped Miss Olsen save our lives. I hope that is all right." Wade looked stunned, then deeply moved. He gently touched the baby's soft cheek with one massive finger. "It is more than all right. It is an honor." After the wedding, Wade carried Zara over the threshold of her cabin, which was now their cabin. He had spent the past 2 weeks making improvements, adding a larger bed, building more shelves and cupboards, expanding the small space to accommodate 2 people. Zara looked around at all his careful work and felt tears prick her eyes again. She seemed to cry so much these days, but they were good tears, happy tears, tears of relief that she was no longer alone. "I have something for you," Wade said, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a wildflower. "I had the blacksmith make it. It is a columbine, the flower that grows all over the high meadows in summer. I want you to have a piece of the mountains, a reminder that you are not just the town midwife anymore. You are my wife and my whole world." Zara let him fasten the necklace around her throat, the silver cool against her skin. "It is beautiful. Thank you, Wade." "Thank you for saying yes," Wade replied, pulling her close. "Thank you for letting me love you." They made love again that night, slower and more leisurely now that they were married, exploring each other's bodies with new freedom. Wade's hands and mouth learned every inch of her, discovering what made her gasp, what made her moan, what made her arch against him in desperate need. Zara traced the scars on his muscled body, remnants of the war and his hard life in the mountains, kissing each one and whispering that she loved every part of him. When they finally lay sated and exhausted in each other's arms, Zara felt a contentment she had never known. "I did not know life could be like this," she whispered. "I did not know I could be this happy." "Get used to it," Wade rumbled, his lips brushing her forehead, "because I plan to make you this happy every single day for the rest of our lives." Life settled into a new rhythm after their marriage. Zara continued her work as the town midwife, but now she had Wade by her side. He accompanied her on difficult calls, providing steady support and an extra pair of hands. The mothers felt comforted by his calm presence, and more than one difficult labor became easier when Wade spoke in his low, soothing voice, telling stories of the mountains and distracting the laboring women from their pain. Between births, Wade taught Zara about the wilderness that surrounded Bonanza. He took her up into the high country on warm spring days, showing her the meadows full of wildflowers, the hidden lakes teeming with fish, the rocky peaks where bighorn sheep grazed. He taught her to read animal tracks, to find wild herbs and roots, to move silently through the forest. Zara loved these excursions, loved seeing the world through Wade's eyes, loved the way he opened up in the wilderness, becoming even more himself. "This is my church," he told her one day as they sat beside a crystal-clear stream, watching trout dart through the water. "This is where I found God again after the war. In the silence of the mountains, in the beauty of creation, I remembered that there is more to life than death and suffering." "I understand," Zara said softly, her hand finding his. "I find God in birth, in that moment when a new life enters the world and takes its first breath. It never stops being a miracle, no matter how many times I witness it." "You are a miracle," Wade said, turning to look at her with those intense, pale blue eyes. "You came into my life when I needed you most, even though I did not know I needed anyone. You made me want to live again, not just survive. You gave me purpose." "We gave each other purpose," Zara corrected, leaning in to kiss him. "We saved each other." As spring turned to summer, Zara began to suspect that she might be pregnant. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she felt a familiar queasiness in the mornings that she had seen in countless expectant mothers. At first, she said nothing, wanting to be certain before she told Wade. But as the weeks passed and her breasts grew tender and her belly began to swell ever so slightly, she knew it was true. She was going to have a baby. After all the babies she had delivered, after all the mothers she had cared for, she was going to become a mother herself. The realization filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She knew all the things that could go wrong, had seen births end in tragedy despite her best efforts. But she also knew the overwhelming love that filled a mother's heart, had witnessed it in hundreds of women's faces as they held their newborns for the first time. Zara decided to tell Wade on a warm evening in July. She made his favorite meal, venison stew with fresh biscuits, and set the table with wildflowers she had picked that afternoon. When Wade came in from chopping wood, his shirt damp with sweat, his muscles gleaming in the lamplight, she felt such a surge of love for him that it almost overwhelmed her. "What is the occasion?" Wade asked, looking at the carefully set table. "Did I forget something important?" "No, you did not forget anything," Zara said, her voice trembling slightly. "I just have something to tell you and I wanted it to be special." Wade's eyes sharpened and he crossed to her in two long strides, his hands cupping her face. "What is wrong? Are you ill? Did something happen?" "Nothing is wrong," Zara assured him quickly. "In fact, something is very right. Wade, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Wade just stared at her, his face blank with shock. Then, slowly, the most beautiful smile Zara had ever seen spread across his features. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." "Yes," Zara said, laughing through sudden tears. "Around February, I think. Are you happy?" Instead of answering, Wade swept her up in his powerful arms, spinning her around and laughing with pure joy. "Happy? Zara, I am more than happy. I am overjoyed. I am terrified. I am grateful. I am everything all at once." He set her down gently, his hands immediately going to her still flat belly. "There is a baby in there. Our baby. Our baby," Zara confirmed, placing her hands over his. "Part of you and part of me growing inside me." Wade dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against her belly, his shoulders shaking. Zara realized with amazement that he was crying, this big, strong mountain man reduced to tears by the news that he was going to be a father. "I thought I would never have this," Wade said, his voice thick with emotion. "After I lost my family, after I spent so many years alone, I thought I would never have a wife, a child, a real home, and now I have everything. You have given me everything, Zara." "We gave it to each other," Zara said softly, running her fingers through his long hair. "We built this life together." Wade rose and kissed her with such tenderness that Zara felt her heart might burst. "I promise you, I will be the best father I can be. I will protect you both with my life. I will make sure our child knows every day how loved they are." "I know you will," Zara whispered. "You are already the best man I have ever known." They celebrated quietly that night, eating the special meal Zara had prepared, talking about names and nurseries and all the changes a baby would bring. Wade was full of plans, wanting to expand the cabin, build a cradle, stock up on supplies. His enthusiasm was infectious, and Zara found her earlier fears melting away. With Wade by her side, she could face anything, even the vulnerability of becoming a mother herself. As her pregnancy progressed, Wade became even more protective. He insisted on accompanying her to every birth, worried that she might overexert herself. He made her rest more, eat more, take better care of herself. Sometimes his concern bordered on smothering, but Zara knew it came from a place of love. so she bore it with patience and occasional gentle reminders that she was pregnant, not fragile. The women of Bonanza were thrilled that their midwife was expecting. They brought her gifts, shared advice, and promised to be there for her when her time came. It touched Zara deeply to realize how much these women cared for her, how much her years of service had meant to them. She was not alone anymore, not just because of Wade, but because she had built a community around her through her work. In October, tragedy struck the Johnson family. The widow Johnson's oldest son, a boy of 15, was killed in a mining accident. The whole town mourned, and Zara attended the funeral with Wade, her heart breaking for the poor woman who had already lost her husband and now her child. After the service, Wade approached Mrs. Johnson and spoke to her quietly. Zara could not hear what he said, but she saw the widow's face crumple with gratitude. Later, Wade told her that he had promised to help Mrs. Johnson's remaining 2 children, to teach the boys to hunt and trap, to give them the skills they would need to support their mother. "You have such a good heart," Zara said, loving him even more for his kindness. "I learned from you," Wade replied simply. "You showed me what it means to care for a community, to be part of something larger than myself. I am just following your example." As winter approached and Zara's belly grew round with their child, Wade became increasingly anxious. He had helped with births before, but the thought of his own wife and child going through the process clearly terrified him. Zara tried to reassure him, drawing on her years of experience, but she understood his fear. She felt it too, in the quiet moments when she let herself think about all the things that could go wrong. "Promise me something," Wade said one night as they lay in bed, his large hand resting on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick. "Promise me that if it comes down to a choice, you will save yourself, not the baby." Zara stiffened. "Wade, I cannot promise that. This is our child." "And you are my wife, my heart, my whole world," Wade said fiercely. "I cannot lose you, Zara. I will not survive it. So promise me that if the worst happens, you will fight to live, even if it means losing the baby." Zara turned to face him, seeing the raw fear in his eyes. She cupped his bearded face with her hands. "I promise I will fight to live, but I also promise that I will fight for our baby. I will do everything in my power to make sure we both survive. Trust me, Wade. I have done this hundreds of times. I know what I am doing." "I trust you," Wade whispered, pulling her close. "I just love you so much it terrifies me." "I love you too," Zara replied, "and that love will get us through whatever comes." December brought heavy snows to the mountains, and Zara found herself housebound more often than she liked. Wade kept her comfortable and entertained, reading to her from the few books they owned, playing card games, telling her stories of his adventures in the wilderness. He was constantly attentive, anticipating her needs before she voiced them, making sure she was warm and well-fed and content. On a bitter cold night in early February, Zara woke to the familiar sensation of her water breaking. For a moment, she lay still, almost unable to believe that it was finally happening. After all the babies she had delivered, she was about to give birth herself. "Wade," she said softly, shaking his shoulder. "Wade, wake up, the baby is coming." Wade was awake instantly, his eyes wide with panic. "Now, the baby is coming now. What do I do? Should I get help? Who should I get? What do you need?" Despite the beginning contractions, Zara had to laugh at his frantic questions. "Calm down. First, babies take time. We have hours yet. But yes, you should fetch Mrs. Henderson and Martha. They both promised to help when my time came, and I will need clean linens, hot water, and my medical bag." Wade leaped out of bed and began rushing around, pulling on clothes and boots. Zara watched him with amusement and love. He was so strong, so capable in every other situation, but the thought of her giving birth had reduced him to a nervous wreck. "Wade," she called, and he stopped mid-rush, turning to her. "I love you, and everything is going to be fine." He came back to the bed, kneeling beside her and taking her hand. "I love you too, more than anything. You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever known. If anyone can do this, it is you." He kissed her deeply, then rushed out into the night to fetch help. Zara used the time alone to prepare herself mentally, breathing through the contractions, reminding herself of everything she knew about birth. She had done this so many times for other women. Now she just had to trust her own body to know what to do. Mrs. Henderson and Martha arrived within the hour, bustling in with supplies and cheerful encouragement. Wade had already set water to boil and laid out clean linens. He hovered anxiously, clearly wanting to help but unsure what to do. "You can stay," Zara told him, knowing he would go mad with worry if he had to wait outside. "But you have to stay calm. No panicking, no matter what happens." "I will be calm," Wade promised, though his white-knuckled grip on her hand suggested otherwise. The labor progressed slowly, as first labors often did. Zara breathed through each contraction, focused on relaxing her body, on trusting the process. Wade stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, speaking to her in that low, soothing voice that had calmed so many laboring women before. "Tell me about the mountains in spring," Zara gasped between contractions. "Tell me about the meadows." Wade understood what she needed, the distraction of his stories. He began describing the high country as the snow melted, the waterfalls crashing down from the peaks, the green shoots pushing up through the earth, the return of the birds and animals. His words painted such vivid pictures that Zara could almost smell the pine and wildflowers, could almost feel the warm sun on her face. Hours passed. Day turned to afternoon, and the contractions grew stronger. Zara could feel the baby moving down, feel her body working to bring her child into the world. The pain was intense, but she had expected that, had witnessed it countless times. She focused on Wade's face, on his pale blue eyes locked on hers, on the love and fear and hope she saw there. "I can see the head," Martha exclaimed suddenly. "Just a few more pushes, Miss Zara. You are almost there." Zara bore down with the next contraction, feeling the burning stretch as her baby crowned. Wade's face had gone white, but he held her steady, his presence giving her strength. One more push, then another, and suddenly there was a release of pressure and a loud, indignant wail. "It is a boy," Mrs. Henderson announced joyfully. "A big, healthy boy." Zara collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and elated. Wade was crying openly now, staring at the squalling infant as Mrs. Henderson cleaned him and wrapped him in a blanket. When she placed the baby in Zara's arms, Zara felt her heart expand to a size she had not known possible. Her son. Their son. He had a shock of dark hair like his father and was already showing signs of inheriting Wade's strong build. His tiny face was red and wrinkled from crying, but to Zara, he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to the world." Wade reached out with one trembling finger to touch the baby's cheek. His hand looked enormous next to their son's tiny face. "He is perfect," Wade said in an awed voice. "You are perfect. You did it, Zara. You brought our son into the world." "We did it," Zara corrected, looking up at her husband with infinite love. "We did it together." After Mrs. Henderson and Martha had cleaned everything up and made sure both mother and baby were doing well, they left the new family alone. Wade climbed into bed beside Zara, carefully wrapping his arms around her and their son. "What should we name him?" Wade asked softly, unable to take his eyes off the baby. Zara had been thinking about names throughout her pregnancy. What about William? After your father, Wade's breath caught. His father had been one of the family members he lost to cholera, and Zara knew how much he still grieved them. William, he repeated, testing the name. William Emerson, yes. Yes, I would like that very much. William Emerson, Zara said, smiling down at her son. You are named after your grandfather, who would have loved you so much. William chose that moment to root at Zara's chest, and she helped him latch on for his first feeding. The sensation was strange and wonderful, her body nourishing her child just as it had for 9 months in the womb. Wade watched in amazement, his hand gentle on William's dark hair. I cannot believe he is ours, Wade said quietly. I cannot believe I am a father. All those years alone in the mountains, I never imagined this. I never imagined being this happy. Neither did I, Zara admitted. When you appeared outside my door that morning, exhausted and half dead on my feet, I thought you were just a stranger offering temporary kindness. I never imagined you would become my whole world. You are my whole world, Wade replied, kissing her forehead. You and William. You are everything I never knew I needed. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, but Zara had never been happier. William was a healthy baby with strong lungs and a healthy appetite. Wade proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with William when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, and gazing at his son with such love that it brought tears to Zara's eyes. The town celebrated William's birth with gifts and visits. All the mothers Zara had helped over the years came to meet the baby, bringing food and baby clothes and advice. Zara realized that she had built something rare and precious in Bonanza, a true community, a network of women who supported and cared for each other. You see, Wade said one evening as they watched William sleep in the beautiful wooden cradle he had built, you are not alone anymore. You have me, you have William, and you have all these people who love you. I have everything, Zara agreed, leaning into her husband's solid warmth. I have more than I ever dreamed possible. As William grew from infant to baby to toddler, Zara continued her work as midwife, though at a slower pace than before. Wade watched William when she was called to a birth, and sometimes she brought the boy with her, teaching him early about the miracle of life. William grew big and strong like his father, with the same dark hair and pale blue eyes, but he had his mother's gentle nature and caring heart. When William was 2 years old, Zara discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news was met with joy rather than terror, both of them confident in what was to come. Their daughter Rose was born in the spring of 1882, a small, delicate baby with blonde hair and Zara's green eyes. William was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to hold her constantly and help care for her. Wade looked at his family with such pride and love that Zara sometimes had to look away, overwhelmed by the emotion. I have everything a man could want, he told her often. A wife I adore, 2 beautiful children, a home, and a purpose. You gave me all of this, Zara. We gave it to each other, Zara always replied because it was true. They had built this life together, stone by stone, choice by choice, moment by moment. When Rose was a year old, Wade took the whole family up into the high country for the first time. He showed them the meadows full of wildflowers, the hidden lakes, the soaring peaks that touched the sky. William ran and played, climbing rocks and chasing marmots, while Rose watched everything with wide, wondering eyes from her father's arms. This is where I healed, Wade told Zara as they stood together, looking out over the vast wilderness. This is where I learned to live again. And now I get to share it with the people I love most in the world. Thank you for sharing it, Zara said softly. Thank you for staying in town that day instead of going back to your solitary life. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. "Thank you for letting me love you," Wade replied. "Thank you for teaching me that a man is not meant to be alone, that love and family and community are worth any risk." As the years passed, Zara and Wade's family grew to include another son, George, born when Rose was 3. Their cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family, and Wade built a larger medical office for Zara where she could see patients and store her supplies. William, as he grew older, began showing interest in medicine, often accompanying his mother to births and asking intelligent questions about her work. "I think he is going to be a doctor," Zara told Wade one evening, watching their oldest son carefully read through her medical texts. "He has the temperament for it, the desire to help people." "He learned that from you," Wade said proudly. "All our children did. They see how you care for this community, how you give of yourself, and they want to be like you." "They learned from both of us," Zara corrected. "You show them every day what it means to be strong and gentle, protective and kind. You are an amazing father, Wade." Wade pulled her close, his arms still as strong as the day she met him, though his dark hair now showed streaks of silver. "I love our life. I love every moment of it. Even the hard moments, the sleepless nights, the worries. I love all of it because I share it with you." When Zara delivered her 1,000th baby in the spring of 1890, the town of Bonanza threw a celebration in her honor. It had been 12 years since Wade first appeared outside her door, 12 years of marriage and family and service. Zara stood before the gathered townspeople, her husband and children beside her, and felt tears stream down her face as person after person stood to share how she had touched their lives. "She saved my wife and baby when everyone else said they would die," one man said. "She sat with me through 30 hours of labor and never once complained," said a woman. "She delivered all 6 of my children and made me feel safe every time," said another. When it was Wade's turn to speak, he rose and looked at his wife with eyes full of love. "12 years ago, I came down from the mountains and heard people talking about the midwife who gave everything to this town, but never had anyone to care for her. I decided that day that I would be the person who cared for her. What I did not know was that in caring for her, she would teach me how to live again. Zara Emerson has delivered 1,000 babies, but she delivered me from loneliness and grief. She saved me as surely as she saved all those mothers and children. I am proud to be her husband, proud to stand beside her, proud to have built a life with the strongest, bravest, most loving woman I have ever known." The applause was thunderous, but Zara barely heard it. She was looking at Wade, at the love shining in his pale blue eyes, at the life they had built together against all odds. She thought about that exhausted, lonely midwife stumbling home one morning 12 years ago, thought about the mountain man who had chosen to care for her when no one else did, thought about everything that had grown from that simple act of kindness. "I love you," she mouthed to Wade across the crowd, and he mouthed it back, his smile warm and true. That night, after the celebration had ended and the children were asleep, Zara and Wade sat together on their porch, watching the stars wheel overhead. Wade's arm was around her shoulders, and Zara's head rested against his broad chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "You ever miss your old life?" Zara asked quietly. "The solitude of the mountains, the freedom of being alone." Wade was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes I miss the silence, the simplicity of it. But I would not trade this life for anything. The loneliness I felt back then was crushing, even if I did not always acknowledge it. I was surviving, not living. You taught me the difference." "You taught me too," Zara said. "You taught me that I deserved to be cared for, that giving everything away until there was nothing left was not noble. It was self-destructive. You taught me to accept help, to lean on someone else to let myself be loved. We saved each other, Wade said, the words that had become their truth. Two broken people who found each other and became whole. They sat in comfortable silence, and Zara felt a contentment that went bone deep. She had her work, her purpose, the satisfaction of bringing life into the world. But she also had love, family, partnership. She had everything she needed, everything she had secretly dreamed of during those lonely years before Wade appeared in her life. "I want to grow old with you," Zara said softly. "I want to watch our children grow up and have children of their own. I want to sit on this porch when we are 70 and 80 years old, looking back at the life we built together." "That is exactly what we will do," Wade promised, his arms tightening around her. "I plan to love you until my last breath, Zara Emerson. And even then, I think my spirit will linger, unable to leave you behind." "Do not talk about leaving," Zara protested, even though she knew death came for everyone eventually. "We have years and years ahead of us." "We do," Wade agreed. "And I plan to make every single one of those years beautiful for you." As the months and years continued to unfold, Wade kept that promise. He stood beside Zara through every birth, every crisis, every moment of doubt. He raised their children with patience and wisdom, teaching them to be strong and kind, brave and compassionate. He built them a bigger house as the family grew, with room for everyone and a large medical office for Zara, where she could treat patients and teach her skills to young women interested in midwifery. William did indeed become a doctor, studying at a medical school in Denver before returning to Bonanza to practice alongside his mother. Rose became a teacher, opening a school for the mining family's children. George, the youngest, inherited his father's love of the wilderness and became a guide, taking wealthy tourists up into the high country to hunt and fish. Zara and Wade became grandparents when William married a lovely young woman named Sarah, and they had 3 children of their own. Rose followed with 4 children, and even George eventually settled down with a spirited woman named Emma who was not afraid of the mountains. The house was always full of laughter and love, children and grandchildren coming and going, and Zara marveled at the family that had grown from that first moment when Wade chose to care for her. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Wade took Zara back up to the meadow where he had first brought her and the children. They were alone this time, having left the grandchildren with William and Sarah. The meadow was in full bloom, carpets of wildflowers stretching as far as the eye could see. Wade spread a blanket and they sat together, looking out at the mountains that had witnessed the beginning of their love story. "You remember the first time we came here?" Wade asked, his hand finding hers. "Of course," Zara replied. "William was 4, running everywhere, and Rose was just a baby. You told me this was your church where you found God again after the war." "It still is," Wade said. "But you are my church too, Zara. In you I found everything I needed to believe in life again. In your love I found purpose. In your strength I found courage. You are my miracle." Zara turned to look at her husband. His hair was more silver than dark now, and lines creased his face, but his pale blue eyes still burned with the same intensity, the same love that had captured her heart 20 years ago. His body was still strong and powerful, muscles earned from a lifetime of hard work, and she still felt safe and cherished in his arms. "You are my miracle too," she said softly. "You appeared when I needed you most, when I was drowning in loneliness and exhaustion. You taught me that I mattered, that my needs were important, that I deserved to be loved. Everything good in my life came from that moment when you chose to care for me." Wade cupped her face in his large hands, his touch still gentle despite his strength. "I will never stop choosing you, Zara. Every day for the rest of my life, I will choose you." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Zara felt the same spark that had ignited between them all those years ago. They made love in the meadow, surrounded by wildflowers and watched over by mountains, celebrating 20 years of marriage with the same passion and tenderness that had marked their first night together. Afterward, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, the summer sun warm on their skin. "Thank you," Wade whispered into her hair. "Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to marry me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for everything." "Thank you for seeing me," Zara replied. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving me." They stayed in the meadow until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. Then they packed up their blanket and rode back down to Bonanza, back to their home and family, back to the life they had built together through love and dedication, and the simple choice to care for each other. The years continued to flow by like water, bringing changes and challenges, but always anchored by the love between Zara and Wade. They celebrated birthdays and weddings, births and anniversaries. They mourned when friends and neighbors passed away. They watched Bonanza grow from a rough mining town into an established community with churches and schools and proper medical facilities. Through it all, Zara continued her work as a midwife, though as she aged, she began training younger women to take over the practice. William handled most of the complicated medical cases now, but mothers still requested Zara for their births, trusting her experience and gentle hands. And Wade was always there, ready to accompany her if needed, still protective after all these years, still determined to make sure someone cared for the woman who cared for everyone else. When Zara turned 55, Wade organized a massive celebration. The entire town turned out, including many of the people Zara had delivered as babies who were now adults with children of their own. They shared stories and memories, laughed and cried, and toasted the midwife who had brought so much life into their community. "I have been thinking," Wade said that night as they prepared for bed. "Maybe it is time we took that trip we always talked about. Go back east, see Boston, show you where I grew up in Missouri. We have spent our whole married life serving this community. Maybe it is time we did something just for us." Zara looked at her husband in surprise. They had talked about traveling for years, but there had always been a reason to stay, another baby to deliver, another family that needed help. "Are you serious? What about my work?" "William can handle things while we are gone," Wade said firmly. "And the other midwives you have trained are perfectly capable. You have given this town 30 years of your life, Zara. I think you have earned a vacation." The thought was tempting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Zara imagined seeing her childhood home again, showing Wade where she grew up, creating new memories together. "All right," she said slowly. "Let us do it. Let us take that trip." They spent 6 months traveling, taking the train east to Boston and then south to Missouri. Zara showed Wade her father's house, now occupied by strangers, and the hospital where she had apprenticed. Wade took her to the farm where he grew up, now abandoned and overgrown, and told her stories of his childhood. They visited museums and theaters, stayed in hotels, and experienced a world very different from their life in Bonanza. But as wonderful as the journey was, they were both relieved to return home to Colorado, to their family and community, to the mountains and meadows they loved. "I am glad we went," Zara told Wade as their train pulled into the station and they saw their children and grandchildren waiting on the platform. "But I'm even more glad to be home." "Home is wherever you are," Wade said simply, taking her hand. "But I know what you mean. This place, these people, this life we built together, this is where we belong." They were welcomed back with joy and celebration, grandchildren climbing all over them, children embracing them, friends welcoming them home. And Zara felt a deep satisfaction settle over her. This was her legacy. Not just the babies she had delivered or the lives she had saved, but the family she had created, the community she had served, the love she had shared. When Zara was 60 years old, she delivered her final baby. It was her own granddaughter, William's oldest daughter Elizabeth, giving birth to her first child. Zara's hands shook slightly as she helped guide her great-granddaughter into the world, feeling the weight of all the years, all the births, all the lives she had touched. "It is a girl," she announced, placing the crying infant in Elizabeth's arms. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Wade was there, as he had been for so many births over the years, his presence steady and calming. He helped Zara clean up afterward, and when they were alone in the washroom, she started crying. "What is wrong?" Wade asked, immediately concerned. "Did something happen?" "Nothing is wrong," Zara said through her tears. "Everything is right. I just delivered my great-granddaughter, Wade." "I went from being a lonely midwife who everyone took for granted to a woman with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I went from being invisible to being at the center of this huge, loving family. And it is all because of you, because you chose to care for me when no one else did." Wade pulled her into his arms, still strong despite his 70 years. "You were never invisible to me. From the moment I saw you, I saw everything you were, everything you gave, everything you needed. I just made sure everyone else saw it too." "You gave me everything," Zara whispered against his chest. "You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me a life worth living." "We gave it to each other," Wade said, the familiar refrain. "And I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Zara retired from midwifery after that final birth, content to let the younger generation take over. She spent her days tending her garden, playing with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and sitting on the porch with Wade, watching the sun set over the mountains they both loved. They grew old together, just as Zara had dreamed all those years ago. Wade's hair turned completely white, and his powerful frame grew leaner with age, but his pale blue eyes still burned with love when he looked at her. Zara's blonde hair turned silver, and her hands grew gnarled with arthritis, but her smile was still bright, and her heart was still full. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary surrounded by family. 3 generations gathered to honor the love that had created them all. William gave a speech, talking about the legacy his parents had built, not just through the lives they had saved, but through the example they had set of what true love looked like. "My father taught me that real strength is not about how much you can lift or how many fights you can win," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "It is about showing up every day for the people you love, about being steady and faithful and true. My mother taught me that caring for others is the highest calling, but that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Together, they taught me that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every single day." Zara looked at Wade through her tears, seeing the same emotion reflected in his eyes. They had lived a good life, a meaningful life, a life built on the foundation of that first moment of kindness when Wade chose to care for her. "I love you," she whispered, and Wade squeezed her hand. "I love you too," he replied. "Always and forever." They lived 5 more years after that anniversary, 5 years of quiet contentment and deepening love. They moved slower now, slept more, relied on their family for help with daily tasks. But they were still together, still holding hands, still choosing each other every single day. Wade died peacefully in his sleep on a cold February night, 2 weeks after his 75th birthday. Zara woke to find him still and cold beside her, his face peaceful, his hand still clasped in hers. She did not cry at first, too shocked to process that the man who had been her constant companion for 45 years was gone. But as the reality set in, as her children gathered around her and the truth became undeniable, she finally let the tears fall. They buried Wade in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking Bonanza, with a view of the mountains he had loved. The entire town turned out for the funeral, paying respects to the man who had cared for their midwife, who had served their community quietly and faithfully for decades. Zara stood at the graveside, supported by her children, and spoke of the love she had shared with Wade. "He saved me," she said simply. "When I was drowning in loneliness and exhaustion, when I had given everything and had nothing left, he appeared and chose to care for me. He taught me that I mattered, that my needs were important, that I deserved to be loved. Everything good in my life came from him, and even though he is gone, that love remains. It lives on in our children, in our grandchildren, in our great-grandchildren. It lives on in the legacy we built together. Wade Emerson was the best man I ever knew, and I will love him until I draw my last breath." The grief was crushing at first. Zara had never lived alone, had gone from her father's house to her own cabin to marriage with Wade. The emptiness of her bed, the silence of her home, nearly broke her. But her family surrounded her with love and support, making sure she was never truly alone. And she found comfort in memories, in the knowledge that she had been blessed with 45 years of true love, which was more than many people ever experienced. Zara lived 2 more years after Wade's death, growing frailer but maintaining her spirit. She spent her days with her family, telling stories of Wade, keeping his memory alive. And when she died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 77, her children knew she had gone to join the man she loved. They buried Zara next to Wade on the hill overlooking Bonanza, their graves side by side, just as they had been in life. The headstone read, "Zara and Wade Emerson." She cared for everyone. He made sure someone cared for her, together forever. The legacy they left behind was immeasurable. William continued his medical practice for another 20 years, serving the community with the same dedication his mother had shown. Rose's school educated hundreds of children, many of whom went on to successful careers. George's guiding business brought prosperity to Bonanza and helped preserve the wilderness Wade had loved. And their grandchildren and great-grandchildren carried forward the values of service, kindness, and love that Zara and Wade had exemplified. For generations, people in Bonanza told the story of the midwife who delivered everyone's babies and the mountain man who made sure someone finally cared for her. They spoke of true love, of sacrifice and service, of 2 people who found each other when they needed it most and built a life that touched countless others. And mothers would tell their daughters, and daughters would tell their daughters after them, about the importance of caring for the caregivers, of making sure that those who give so much are themselves cherished and supported. The story became legend, then history, but the truth at its core remained constant. Love is not just about grand gestures or passionate declarations. Love is about showing up every day, about seeing someone fully and choosing to care for them, about building a life together one moment at a time. That was the legacy of Zara and Wade Emerson, and it lived on long after they were gone. A testament to the power of love and the importance of making sure that everyone, especially those who care for others, has someone who cares for them in return.